Finally, Lord Frost, I'd like to just ask you a few general questions about economic policy, overall governance. Where do you stand on things like lower taxation, smaller state, free trade, the influence of the OBR and the Bank of England's policies, and how they affect everyday people?
I think tax and spending is far too high. That's the starting point. It's the highest it's been for 50, 70 years, depending on how you count it. And, we know that high tax countries over time grow less fast than low tax countries. And we've just got to get back to this position where the state is smaller and more is left to enterprise and the private sector. We've seen productivity falling off for the last 20 years or so now, and there are a lot of reasons for that. I think actually the distortions of being part of the single market are part of it. Zero interest rates and all the consequences of that are part of it. So we need to remarketize. We need to bring back kind of capitalism and free markets to Britain, and those things have been choked out over the last 20, 25 years. The arteries of the economy have furred up, and we need to bring them back. And that is going to require a very major reform program. I mean, probably bigger than most people realize. But if you want to be growing at 2.5% again, and I think we do, and that's not a hugely ambitious target historically, we've got to do all of those things. Cut the state, cut the dead hand of the bureaucracy, bring back markets and enterprise.
What do you think about the new global threats to the United Kingdom that have come to the fore in the last few years? And specifically, what do you think about the latest defence spending package that's been announced by Rishi Sunak that wasn't even mentioned in the budget?
We're obviously in a more dangerous world. The world's got more dangerous in the last decade or so. We've finally woken up to that. And we, the UK, we, the West, need to get serious about dealing with that again. We've been very complacent. We've looked very weak, and it's encouraged our opponents and enemies. And we need to put an end to that and get tough again. Now, we can't do anything about other NATO members, but we can do something about ourselves. And we do need to be pushing up defense spending. So the decision is welcome. Ideally, we should be pushing it up a bit further and a bit more quickly, but it's good. I think it's a decision taken kind of under political pressure as much as out of real conviction, but it doesn't matter if the money gets spent. That's good. But of course, with defense, as with any other public good that we want to spend public money on, unless we can bring back growth, this is always going to be a problem. If we live in the zero growth economy, then defense spending has to come at the expense of something else, and that always makes the politics much, much more difficult. If we can get back to growth, then it becomes much easier to do these things and push it up to the right level. So all these things are connected.
Of course they are, but let me put this to you. The first duty of government is the defense of its people. And do you actually think that 2.5% by the year, I believe it's 2030, 6 years' time, do you seriously think that, given the threats that we're now facing, that is realistic, regardless of economic considerations?
Well, I think we should be trying to get to 3%, if I'm honest. Other people have talked about that. 3% by 2030 looks like a better target to me. We used to spend 4% in the Cold War, of course, and the Americans even more than that. And we've got used to much, much lower figures. So I think we probably should be more ambitious. And that helps you shape the politics, obviously, if people can see that this is coming and there will have to be cuts made elsewhere, then one should be assertive. about that, I think. So, we can only speak for ourselves. We can only, do what's necessary in our country, but we can give a lead perhaps to others in being ambitious on it.
Lord David Frost, where are we on the Conservative Party and its chances in the forthcoming general election?
I don't write anything off. The election I was most recently involved in fighting was the one in which Boris came in July 2019, when we had just scored 9% in the legacy European elections, and 6 months later he won it with 43% of the vote. And that happened because he got the policies right, and we looked like a government that had conviction and knew what we were doing. Now, so I refuse to believe that we can't turn this around, but obviously we're not going to turn it around by just doing more of what we're doing at the moment and hoping something turns up. We need to do some of the things we've been talking about to bring back Conservative voters to the party. And most of them, some have gone to reform, but most of them are just sitting on their hands, sort of fed up with what they see as a party and a government that isn't doing what they want to do. And if we can get serious about doing what they want to do, then we can change that. So obviously it's a mammoth task. Obviously things are difficult, but I really fear what a Labour government could bring for this country. I and Boris and colleagues fought so hard for Brexit when it seemed unachievable, and I just don't want to see it all thrown away because we can't be bothered to deliver on what Brexit was about and make the right sort of appeal to our voters. So I refuse to give up, but at the moment we're not doing the right thing, and obviously we're going to lose badly.
David Frost, you've answered questions for a long time in this series, and I'd like to thank you for that. And I think our readers and our audience will be very, very interested in what you've had to say. It will be very interesting to see whether you are selected for Parliament, and if you are, what role you might play going forward in the future. But it's been a pleasure to speak to you on behalf of both factsforeu.org and CIBUK.org. So we'd like to thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. We've covered lots and lots of ground, and I can certainly reassure you I'm going to carry on fighting, and will definitely be around and trying to deliver what we need for this country: national independence and economic success.